Hello, hello. Welcome to Effin' Fridays with Francine. I am super excited for today's episode. Today, I have Andy Grant with me. Has been helping people for over 15 years as a best-selling author, speaker, transformational energy coach, healer, teacher, suicide prevention activist, and host of the award-winning podcast, Real Men Feel. He holds certificates in positive psychology, the Awaken coaching system, Akashic records, life activation, and other leadership programs and energy work modalities. Known as the king of authenticity, Andy encourages men to come out of the emotional closet and create a life of joy. As a survivor of multiple suicide attempts, Andy knows how low we as humans can feel, and he is committed to helping people realize how magnificent life is meant to be. His Amazon bestseller, Still Here: How to Succeed in Life After Failing at Suicide, has helped people around the globe and includes everything he wished he knew at a younger age. Andy is also an initiate at the Modern Mystery School. Andy, I am so excited to have this conversation with you today. Welcome.
Thanks. I'm effing excited to be here too.
Effing excited to be here. Yes. So I know you hate the question, tell me about yourself. And I get it, but you've had a really amazing journey. I mean, there's a lot in that intro, right? So
Yeah.
just share with the listeners like where you were and how you got to where you are, because that's a pretty beautiful story.
Yeah. My path is not recommended. My journey to loving life began with hating life.
Yeah.
From a very young age, depressed, suicidal, had multiple failed suicide attempts before I finally accepted the possibility that just maybe I'm supposed to be here.
Maybe, right?
Yeah. And that's really what
And we're
began to
glad you
open me up.
are.
Yeah, thanks. I am too. Um, I grew up thinking that life sucks, then you die. And my dad had always told me high school are the best years of your life. And I thought, from age like 7, well, why would anyone want to live beyond the best years?
Wow. Yeah.
So I had always had expected dates and planned times that I would exit. And luckily, they didn't work. And again,
Yeah.
then again, it finally dawned on me, maybe I'm supposed to be here. And I had plenty of
Right.
dark nights of the soul. And I got messages, share my story. The pain will all be worth it. One thing I've really discovered is how much joy I get from being of service.
Mm.
And I was a bit of a recluse. I was an introvert. Um, I actually flunked out of college to avoid a mandatory public speaking class at one point.
Wow.
Yeah, and I'm
And now
talking
you have
every
your own
day, opening
podcast.
myself. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just bananas. We were talking about fear before the
Yeah.
show, and what we think we're afraid of just isn't the case usually.
Right.
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 I feared. I didn't fear public speaking. I feared dying of embarrassment.
Ooh. Yeah.
And then, as I realized, I've learned that I cannot overshare. The more vulnerable I am, the more authentic I am, the more positive input I receive from other people, from life itself.
Yeah.
So, you said in the intro, like I want to remind people that their life is meant to be magnificent. We're meant to be joyous beings. Even on the worst day, this is an amazing place to be.
Right. It's better. My dad used to say to me all the time, you don't want to get old. And I would think, well, the alternative, right? Like, come on. And I'm just gonna say I'm turning 60 on Sunday. So
Oh,
like, well, by the time this airs, I will have already turned it, but yes. So I'm like, okay, let's bring on old. Or whatever
well,
old
this
is,
is like
right?
aging and yeah, you like I feel very gleefully immature.
Right. Absolutely, right?
Yeah. So like yeah, old is a state of mind. You can't stop the calendar. We can't stop aging, but
Right.
yeah, it's all about the attitude.
But
My goal is to be the youngest old man that's ever been.
right, absolutely. I'm throwing myself a birthday party and my invitations went out saying, WTF, how is this possible that I'm turning 60? Please come help me celebrate. So I really want to talk about, this real men feel because you and I were having a conversation before we started recording, and I work a lot with women, and women want men to be women. right? We want them to have these really deep conversations, and they can, but when they don't, we really take that personally,
Yeah.
right? They're not this, they're not that. And as a former professional matchmaker, when men are really sharing their feelings, we think something's wrong with them. So they can't fucking win,
Yeah. Yeah,
right?
I totally agree.
Yeah.
I've
So
met many
let's
women that say, yeah, they want that emotional man, and then a man does open up and like, oh, they're like, oh my God, shut it down.
Right.
Like, yeah,
They're red flags. I
yeah,
actually had a woman recently at a workshop I taught, and she had been on a second date, and the guy shared something, and she was like, "That's a red flag." And I was like, "Why is that a red flag?" And we had this conversation, and she was like, "Oh, maybe that's me." I was like, "Maybe, because I don't see like didn't trigger me like it did her,
yeah,
but like she's looking for reasons to not continue and what have you. So
yeah.
let's talk about that a little bit. Poor men. I always feel bad for men, for the men in my, the women's lives that I encounter, because it feels like they can't win.
Yeah. Um, I believe it's getting better. The more and more people I
Agreed.
talk to,
Yes.
you know, one of the big secrets between men and women, men need to be appreciated.
Mm,
The pat on the back, the thank you, the good job. Um, True masculinity exists to serve femininity.
yes.
Opening the doors, helping with the grocery bag, doing the heavy thing, doing the manly things in a relationship.
My husband and I
When,
just celebrated our 24th wedding anniversary, and he still opens the car door for me. I love that.
yeah,
And
right.
I have the more masculine energy in our relationship,
Hmm.
but I have a damsel archetype. I want him to do things for me,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
So,
and men
yeah.
want to do that, but they also
Yeah.
want to be thanked and appreciated for that, not
Absolutely.
scolded like, "Why'd you open the door? I can do this." It's
Hmm.
not about feminism. It's not about women
Right.
can't do things, but men want to be of service.
Yeah.
The most amazing buildings in the world were often created to impress a woman, right? Wars were launched to impress and woo a woman and throughout history, right?
Yeah.
So to say that it's a male-dominated world, I think it's really inaccurate. Men are of service, and it comes from being sperm, like one out of a million sperm.
Right.
Only one makes it. So men have this almost disposable, I'm just here to do a job. It's in our DNA.
Right.
And when society suppresses other aspects of our DNA, other aspects of our being, men can be left feeling isolated, meaningless, purposeless, pointless, because we want to be of service, and the service brings us meaning.
Yeah.
But one of the things, men and women communicate differently as well. And often the scariest thing you can do to a man is go, honey, we need to talk. And sit down, and they'll be like a deer in headlights. Oh, fuck, when I'm in trouble. The
I
way
learned
to
that
get,
many years ago.
yeah, I find the way to get to a man's heart is to distract them. A man is best, going for a walk, bowling, doing some woodworking, have the
Right.
man working on a puzzle together, anything, but have the conversation be secondary, not
Yeah.
the sole thing you're doing.
Right.
Right?
Right. And,
Um,
one of the things that I would say from my own journey and learning how to be a better communicator with my own partner is, as a woman, I then have to be vulnerable.
yeah,
Vulnerability is a four-letter word to me, right? So I've learned how to make it about me. Hey, this is what's coming up for me versus this is what you did. Right. And then also understanding self, right? Like I work with clients on being in relationship with yourself, understanding my love language is acts of service. My husband does more around the house than I ever will do. But if he tells me he's going to do something and didn't, years ago, it would have been he might as well have just said, I hate you, I'm leaving, goodbye, because
sure,
that's how I responded. So then like he was really, what was happening was he was feeling shame because he didn't do it.
mm,
Right. And I was like, you just said you were going to do this and you didn't. I was feeling hurt because that's my love language. Now he's in shame because he wants to make me happy. And then I had to realize, I'm like, oh, yeah, he just has ADD. This has nothing to do with me. And that just shifted the dynamics
yeah,
around how we communicate, because it
yeah,
wasn't about him. It was about what was coming up in me. And I had to
yeah,
work on that first.
yeah. And even in your requests saying, I need you to do X, Y, or Z. Oh, and again, a man innate nature is going to want to serve that. But it's like, hey, do this, do that.
Right.
Because then it's like nagging and henpecking and oh, there's no appreciation, there's no request, there's no giving and receiving. It's just
Yeah.
task, task, task.
And then, of
And
course, they
that,
never do it right. They don't do it the way we would do it. So then we tell them they did it wrong. And then they go into shame and all the other things because all they wanted to do was make us happy. And we've now told them they didn't do it right.
yeah, bad things.
Right. And it's just, and I think at the fundamental, it's looking at self, right? Like checking in what is going on with yourself. How do you work with your clients, right? Because you're working with the men. How do you help them to then be in relationship with maybe women who aren't doing some work and looking at themselves?
Well, for anyone doing the inner work, you need partners that are doing the work as well.
100%.
Right? If you get in a relationship, if you're just dating or you're married forever, if one of you is growing and one is not, that relationship has an end date for sure.
Yeah.
But where I start with my male clients is evaluating their values, finding out what's
Mm,
important to them, and that's just introspective work that just guys aren't taught to do.
right.
And often they'll find out, well, here are my top three values, and nothing I do in my day-to-day life serves those at all.
Right.
So when someone's clear on the values, it makes making choices much easier, right? Does this bring me more love, bring me more joy, bring me more freedom, bring me more abundance, like whatever your values are. When I first did the value exercise myself, God, 20 years ago, my first go around, I had safety as my top value.
Mm,
And that was pointed out, I'm like, oh, that's just so fear-based, right?
right.
I can't, safety is my most important thing, means I'm not going to do anything. I'm going to hide. I'm going to retreat. I'm going to hide under the covers. I'm like,
You've
oh
gotten over
man.
that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But, and, you know, action cures fear.
Mm,
So once I realized that, oh, I'm living so fearfully, the more I do, the more I push. And again, everything I open up and share about, greatly rewarded. For years, I was afraid of doing anything publicly, any sort of video, for just being called names online and being trolled. And now when that happens, I just laugh. And I'm like, oh my God, this is something I was afraid of before. Like it just cracks me up. Um, but yeah, communication is key. We communicate differently. Men walk, if you walk with a man, that's a great time to ask and how they're really feeling. But I find from men that they often tell me that their spouse, their girlfriend, their wives are the person that they are the first to open up to.
yeah.
And again, if women are looking for that, but then in a date, a man can share too soon and decide, oh, that guy's crazy or whatever it
Right.
is. Yeah. So everybody, we need to be clear on what we want and
Right.
perhaps even why we want it. Does a woman long for a man who's open and emotional because her dad wasn't? Right? But then when that version of a man shows up, it could be so contrary to what she expects men to be that it
Right.
throws her off.
And we repeat the same patterns, right? Like we're going to keep calling that in. I
Yeah,
love that. I
yeah.
love that. So I'd love to talk a little bit about suicide prevention because I know that's near and dear to your heart, right? So, what would you say to somebody that might be listening that's feeling, like, ugh, I'm in this, hamster wheel. I'm like feeling that, we don't talk about mental health, right? There's so much um negativity around mental health that we just don't talk about it and it's shamed. So it's, kept in the closet.
Yeah. It's honestly hard for me to see that still because I talk about mental health daily and
Right.
have for
Yeah.
years now. So I really see the stigma lessening and lessening.
Sure. That's
On Real Men
beautiful.
Feel, I've recently talked to 16-year-olds and 18-year-olds that are like making apps to eliminate male loneliness and like, wow. And they're
Love
talking about,
that.
working with sports psychologists and college football teams and it takes another secret about guys. Once one man opens up, that competition kicks in. Well, I'll open up too. Well, I'll
Right.
share even a grocer's story, or here's when I was at my worst. Here's this story, and I see that in like men's circles. But
Yeah.
it can happen in any environment, any place that feels safe.
Yeah.
And the average man will deny he needs safety, but he does.
I'm curious, does that fall in line? Like, will they not share if they don't feel that they're in a safe environment?
Sure,
Yeah.
yeah. That and again, due to stigma, societal expectations, most places don't feel safe to
Right.
say, I feel like I'm living a lie.
Yeah.
I feel so empty. I've done all the things I'm supposed to do, and like I have constant thoughts about killing myself.
Yeah.
And what do I say to someone in such a place with those thoughts? Don't keep it to yourself. Talk to if you don't have someone in your life you can trust and talk to and feel safe, call a suicide prevention line. Like
Right.
call someone. But those thoughts, when they just stay in your head and just ruminate, that's when they're damaging. They really are. But when you can share it, so many times I've been surprised by just me telling, I feel this bad. That it's a release. It gets that energy, it gets that vibration release out of me a little bit. And I feared for a long time if someone knew how I really felt, they would just flee. I would be
Well, I was
friendless.
curious. That's what I was going to ask you. What do you think stops people from actually sharing? Is
Yeah,
it
fear,
that
fear of being
fear?
judged,
Yeah.
fear of being reprimanded, fear of doing it wrong, fear of just, isolation.
Yeah.
So, and if you have a loved one that tells you that they are feeling that bad, they're having suicidal thoughts, you usually don't need to say a thing.
Mm,
Just be there. Just go hand on the shoulder, and touch their
right.
heart, give them a hug, say, I get it. I hear you. Is there anything I can do? But don't offer advice unless it's asked for. But again,
Right.
just I've only met I've only met like two people in my life that claim to have never had a suicidal thought.
Mm,
So it's horribly common.
yeah.
The thing where it gets really dangerous if someone's talking to you and they really have a plan and they have means, and if someone is telling you how bad they feel and they go, "Yeah, I've got a loaded gun in my pocket," and then,
Listen
well,
to
all right, we've got to escalate this. Like,
right.
if it was, I would not leave that person's side.
Right.
I would try to get them to an emergency room, try to get them like immediate crisis care, and just hearing somebody's thoughts, very different.
Right.
So it's
Right.
important to realize that.
And I know people that have like the ruminating thoughts, but they have support and they take action. Is there, is that just part of the mental health part of it, that that is just part of your DNA? Because I think you said from a young age you had these thoughts, right? Like
Yeah.
what makes a young kid even know what that is, right? So is that just part of the mental health piece of it?
For me, it was very circumstantial.
Okay.
I was molested by a next door neighbor at the same time that my parents were divorcing when I was age 5 and 6.
Yeah.
So again,
You want
I
it
don't
out.
know that I
Yeah.
caused it, but yeah, I was like, world's not safe. I can't
Yeah.
trust men. If I tell my mom what's happened, I'll be the next man kicked out of the house. That was
Right.
a fear.
Right.
So I shut it down.
Yeah.
Then decided the world wasn't safe. I can't trust anybody. And it led for years uh, of misery.
Right.
And even when my parents loved me, they would try to get me help, but I thought I was so broken, I wasn't worthy of help. I just
Mm,
wanted out. So, even at age 12 or 13, I was taken to child psychiatrists, and I would just tell them enough to make them feel like they found out something and,
right.
leave me alone.
And you have your
That was my
dad
goal.
saying high school's the best years, right?
Yeah.
So like, all right, what am I looking forward to?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
the answer was not much, but it's all outlook. We do create our lives. We create our own
Right.
universe, and we are the center of each of our own individual universes. But it's very challenging to step outside of that and witness yourself. And for me, like for years, therapists recommended me to journal and do gratitude journaling, and I just poo-pooed that and laughed and ridiculous. And then finally, after probably a decade, oh, I'll give it a shot, and it worked. I felt better. And
Right.
it's so that and positive affirmations are another thing that I made thought was ridiculous and what nonsense, but I was giving myself negative affirmations all the time, and somehow
Right.
that was
And those were
acceptable.
working, so why
Yeah,
wouldn't the positive
right.
ones?
Yeah. So if I'm gonna lie to myself, why don't
Right.
my lies talk about how successful I can be and how much fun I can have in life? And yeah, um, do the things that you see working for the people that are recommended. Like, don't just judge and put something out of mind based on your prejudices, your beliefs about it. Like, experience guides me to what I do. Everything I do and share with clients is something I learned to literally save my life.
Right.
Things
Right.
that didn't work, I didn't pursue. I don't share. I don't mention. My book still here is full of all sorts of uh, meditation practices, Ho'oponopono, EFT, all these little things that helped along the way. They're things that helped alleviate the symptom, help alleviate some pain, and just get me through that day. Like,
Right.
almost like AA. Take one day at a time.
One
It's
day, yeah.
when you're dealing with suicidal thoughts, it's the same thing.
Right. Oh, yeah, I would imagine, right? Because, all right, let me get through to tomorrow. All right, let
Yeah.
me get through tomorrow.
And it can
Yep.
just be, let me get through this hour. Let me get
Yeah.
through this minute. Right.
Do you think that there are more men that struggle with with mental health and expressing their emotions than we actually really know about because it's
Oh,
not
certainly.
safe?
Yeah, certainly. And this, thank God, there's no like national registry. Oh, let me go log in as depressed
Right.
today for, it's just, yeah, men keep more to themselves. Um, for years, my energy coaching work was I had far more women than men, and all the women assumed I had these army of men behind me. And to make something for men is how real men feel came to be.
Yeah.
But you're talking like women are braver exploring their personal growth, spiritual growth, be willing to expand their horizons, their mindset. Men will kind of come to it begrudgingly after other things have failed, or if maybe they see someone feels a little better, and it's like
Oh, their
just, well,
wife
give me
pulls
one
them to
toe.
it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So many male listeners tell me that their wives or girlfriends found real men feel and say, "You've got to listen to this
Yeah.
podcast."
I'm curious, do you think, like, I think women need community, right? And I know my own personal journey to personal development and where I am today started because I was looking for community. Was probably in my mid 40s. I was like, where did all my girlfriends go? Everybody's off having babies and living their best life. And I need one of my top values is connections. I need people. So I found a women's group that was run by coaches and energy healers. And, so it started where my husband doesn't, I mean, he enjoys people. He's much more introverted than I am. So, do you think it's that women maybe embrace the work more because of community where men are more solo?
Yeah.
Although I will say my husband has gone to, retreats and stuff and he loves, and, he's in a group of men that makes him feel safe and all the
Yeah.
things, but that took some time.
Yeah. For the most part, women naturally share more with each other.
Yeah.
There is that it takes a village mentality
Right.
that is stronger. But also, men thrive. It can be in sports and teams, and it is that community. And then the man might age out of that and be like, well, now what? And, a workplace doesn't necessarily mean your best friends are there.
Right.
One of the first things I made for Real Men Feel was a guide to adult friendship and just
Mhm.
listing all the hundreds of places an adult man can meet somebody, and from martial arts to bowling to the bar, the library. Go to where your interests are. See, find that other 10% of men that are boldly exploring themselves,
I
because
love
there's more
that.
and more and more.
I wrote a blog post a few years ago. It was titled something like "I'm a straight woman trying to date other women." Because that's what trying to nurture friendships are. You're like, "Hi,
Yeah,
Susie. So it was really nice meeting you today. Would you like to go get coffee next week?" And then you wait to see if she answers, right?
yeah,
But like,
yeah,
we have to, we're not the kids on the playground that we don't, we have to put ourselves out there
yeah.
to make. Yeah, I love that. What do you
But and
think
there are
some of the
there
biggest
there are big
misconceptions?
men's groups. I want to get the
Yeah, yeah.
Mankind Project is a group that's international, and they have a weekend initiation for men.
Okay.
I did it in 2016. I went into it cocky, like I've been to lots of programs. I'll show these guys how it's done. And I was first to do things, and I'm
Yeah.
bawling, and I'm confessing, and I'm a mess. And I walk back to my group, and all the guys are like, "Fucking way to go! What the fuck? You're like, now we gonna do that?" So, but I didn't realize until then I had never been in an event only with men, and it
Yeah.
made a difference. And that's where I discovered in my 40s, I discovered I still, from the molestation, I had a fear of men. I didn't trust men.
Yeah.
And this weekend blew that apart.
Yeah.
But there's
I love
every
that.
man. I used to facilitate for mensgroups.com. But yeah, one of the best things a man can do is find community. And these
Yeah.
are all safe places to.
Right.
I find time and time again, a man shares his deepest, darkest secret, and other men go, "Me too."
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Right. It's so, yeah, it's fascinating. I love that. What do you think are some of the biggest misconceptions about men's mental health and vulnerability?
Hmm. Well, the biggest issue is that people believe the mask,
Mm,
right? Every man wears the mask of stoicism, do it alone, everything's fine, leave me alone. It's bullshit.
right.
Everybody needs help. Everybody has challenging times, rough days. The misconception is that men don't have the emotions that women do. Yeah, we're all human beings. The
Right.
same emotions exist. they will be displayed differently.
Differently.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's all. But they're there.
Yeah.
And you can't, or it's challenging again, because every being has masculine and feminine energy. So nobody, and that's kind of what one of the toughest masks is a man that denies any femininity because it thinks it makes him gay or some other
Right.
horrible thing word
Right.
coming from childhood, you know. But some of the strongest men are can capable of great beauty and creation, right?
Yeah.
So typically creation is really feminine energy, but men go out and build things and pave roads and that's creativity too. But yeah, we all the same emotions are there. They can be expressed differently, and they usually men are taught that their emotions are wrong. I still horribly meet young men that are told boys don't cry,
Right.
right?
Well, I
Suck it
think
up,
as a
man up.
society, we are, right? Look at a baby that falls and the parents pick, or a toddler, you're fine, you're okay, stop crying. Like we're told across the board from an early age to suck it up,
Yeah. Yep.
right?
Yeah. And it's does a tremendous disservice.
Yeah.
It really does.
What's some advice you would give to someone who wants to support a man in their life who may be struggling?
Let them know how much you care.
Mm,
Like, don't let things like that be assumed. Like, I'm worried about you, right? Are you okay? And again, only if it's true, you can tell me anything,
right.
right? I'm not going to run, I'm not going to flee, but is something going on, right? And it's make that safe space. Perhaps share something. If a woman shares her fears of what her man's going through,
Right.
again, that compassion will kick in, and that want to be of service will kick in. Um, not long ago, I had a long spell of depression and apathy. And it wasn't until my wife stopped acting like everything was fine and just carrying on, and I saw her really worried about when am I going to snap out of this. And that's what kind of cracked my heart open again. Because
Yeah.
a man is willing to be in pain a lot and keep it shut up and quiet and really destroy himself. But when somebody cares about is in pain, he'll do anything he can to help
Mm.
alleviate that.
Fix it. I love that. And I think we have to recognize that. I had a conversation with a client a couple of years ago. She she had asked her husband to do something and he didn't do it. So then you didn't do the thing, blah, blah, blah. And she said, he always rolls his eyes at me. And I said, can we just take a step back for a second? What if he actually wasn't rolling his eyes at you, but he felt shame that he didn't do the thing that you wanted? That shifted everything for her. Like she never, because it was tapping on her own wound. And I was like, what if this has nothing to do with you? And she was like, oh. And it has made a difference in how you mentioned, and I kind of agreed, it's hard to just have one partner doing work and the other one not. And I believe that to be true to a point, but I do believe like as we're doing work, others change around us,
Sure.
even if they're not.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I remember when I was starting my healing journey, I had a dark night of the soul. Somebody said to me, what do you do for fun? And I actually couldn't answer the question. So I came home from that weekend and like was silent for a month. And my husband was like, like, are we getting divorced? Like, what's happening? And at the time I couldn't tap into my vulnerability because I didn't even know what was happening. I just
Yeah.
knew I was shut down. And I was like, I don't know. Like, I don't know what's up. I don't know. But it opened up conversation for us. And then when he started seeing me shift, then he decided he wanted to do some work. And I remember saying to him at the time, and he will say, he did, I would say, you have to do this for you, not for me. And at the time he said he was doing it for him. He's like, yeah, I probably was doing it for you back then, but saw the benefit in it. And then it became his own journey.
Mhm. Yeah, when one person is growing, the people around you will grow and change because your energy is forcing it upon them. All
Right.
all energy is contagious.
Or they
So
go
if you're
away.
raising
It's
your,
they
yeah,
either come
right,
up or they go away. Yeah.
right. So again, and
Yeah.
the longer if they try to not do their work, the likelihood of them going away increases.
Right.
Like you don't have to be at the same level of everything you do together,
Right.
but
Right.
yeah,
Right.
you both want to be rising.
Exactly. How has energy work and spirituality played a role in your healing journey?
Oh my God, it's 100% responsible for it.
Yeah.
Um, I grew up, I wasn't raised with any religion. I thought that made me an atheist as a kid. Um, discovering my own divinity
Mm,
is what makes me stick around.
I
Being
love
able to see the god and goddess in everybody that I meet. Namaste isn't just some way to end your yoga class. It really means
that.
I see the god within me sees the god within you.
Yeah,
And that's reality. That's the truth. So, it's a cliche, and we are spiritual beings having a physical experience. It's not the other
right,
way around.
right,
And I now know and believe that in a great sense, we are immortal. The spirit part of me lives on. That energy part of me lives on. So whatever I thought I could escape by ending my life by my own terms, at my own bizarre timeline, I've come to realize I'm here to deal with those because it's easier to deal with here in the physical.
right,
So that's if I want to make people ending their lives due to emotional pain such a freaking rare thing. Like it makes the news that
right,
instead of it makes the news because it's a celebrity, it's like, wow, we've had our first suicide in 5 years today.
right, right.
The
I
whole
love
nation is
that.
sad, right?
Yeah.
But so much of that comes from knowing yourself, knowing
Mm,
yourself as God, knowing your divinity. So many woo-woo things are rooted in this truth. Going back, ancient times knew this. Indigenous people knew this. Ancient shamans knew this. And when we separate from each other, when we label and tag and make all these false tribes, that separation is where darkness and evil grow.
yeah, yeah, I love that. Can we talk a little bit about Akashic Records?
Sure.
Because I know a little bit, like I have a sense of what it is, but like tell people what they are and what role do they play in transformation and how they can help someone seek some clarity in their life.
Right. So Akasha is a Sanskrit word for primary substance. And
I
if
learned
people,
something new. I did not know that.
oh,
All
yeah.
right. I just thought it was a
So
really cool word.
um, it's kind of like the Library of Congress for you. And everyone has their own infinite library. Everything you've ever done, thought, it's in the records. Each night you go to sleep, you're uploaded, you're filling your records.
Hmm.
And by having access to a place with all that information, it can help you get healing, insights, validation, and make choices about the future. So how I work with the records, and it's kind of if people are more comfortable knowing, more and more people know about quantum physics these days. So it's that in place of infinite possibilities, the quantum realm, where things are a wave and a particle, like things, it's just pure energy. So that's another element of the records. But I using a simple prayer, I open somebody's records and they ask questions. And for me, it's kind of like I'm in the middle of an auditorium, and all these beings of light and angels and sometimes loved ones crossed over all speak in unison, answering the questions.
Ooh.
And then sometimes one individual will step forward and kind of lead the way and speak alone. But usually it's this chorus. It's like a spiritual support team all cheering on you and wanting to give you guidance. So, and the records never tell you what to do.
Yeah.
It's more like, oh, I've got these two options, or I've got these two business opportunities. I'm not sure which one to go. One of them always has more energy and more light.
Okay.
Um, because free will you, trumps everything.
Right.
So the records are all about supporting you, and it's there's no sort of like clock. It's not people. Some people are afraid of going in there because it's not like there's a comparison. It's like, oh, you should be 5 years ahead of where you are now, and oh, here's all the things you did wrong. They're only supportive, they're only encouraging, and tremendous healing, validation. Sometimes actual healings happen. Like
Hmm.
light will come down from the records to help dissolve some old block, something that you're not capable of just getting over with your own mental abilities or anything like that. But yeah, it's one of my favorite things to do. I've been depressed and like, oh, someone books, like, oh God, I got to do a record reading. And 5 seconds into it, I'm like, woohoo, this is the best. I'm
This
in
is
that space.
I
And
love that.
again, for me, it's I've never knowingly channeled something, but this
Yeah.
is the closest to channeling because
Okay.
so every session gets recorded for people.
Yeah.
Because I don't once we close the records, people go, hey, when you said this, I'm like, I didn't say anything. I'm just repeating what I
You're
hear.
just the channel for it.
Right.
I love
Yeah.
that. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, at the Natural Living Expo here in Massachusetts
Yeah.
every November. Like last November, I did a record, I think it was 38 readings over the weekend. And I was like, when I first did it a few years ago, I crashed hard. Like, this is what I'm gonna do. This is the best day. And then, like, oh, by Tuesday, I was a mess. And now I'm like, I know the crash from that high will come, and
Yeah.
I can
Yeah.
deal with it much better now. But yeah, it's a fantastic experience.
I've
Living
started
in this
doing
world.
like I do oracle card readings and I've started doing them at like events and stuff. I don't do a ton, but the first time I did like 10, I was like, "Whoa, that's a lot." I'm like, "Oh, we need to learn how to protect our energy a little bit
Yeah,
better."
yeah. Yeah, that's one of the best programs. The first energy coaching program I ever did. Again, it was people would often tell me, Andy, most of your suicidal thoughts, they're not even yours. I'm like, great. What does that mean? What do I do with
Right?
that? That
Now what
meant
do I do
nothing
with
to
that
me. I'm like, well,
information?
then take it away. So I did this Awaken energy coaching experience and learned how to remove energy that's not mine out of me, and learned how to
Mm,
protect myself, make boundaries and shields so I can go anywhere, do things. And, like after I have a session with someone, we hang up and I'll make a gold bubble to the left and to the right. I'll take my energy back out of you into the bubble. I'll take your energy out of me into that bubble
yeah,
and give it back to its owners. And yeah.
and do all the things. I love that.
Yep.
So let's talk about living a magnificent life. So, what does a magnificent life look like for you?
Ah, whew. It's travel, it's service, it's always learning. Um, man, it's doing anything and everything that brings me joy.
Mm,
There's so many. Like I recently had this trip to Africa and I did crazy things and bucket list things and bungee jumping and sitting in this place called Devil's Pool. And I come home, people are like, I don't, you amaze me. Like you put in so much energy and thought in trying to die, and then you also put energy and thought in ways that could kill you. I'm like, yeah, but it's very different. Like these are all activities of joy and living my
right,
life to the
right.
fullest. So a
Yeah.
magnificent life to me is living my life to the fullest. Ever since I was in corporate America in the late 90s, early 2000s, living in a gray cube, all my vacations became adventure. Whitewater rafting, rappelling, living in caves in Costa Rica, going to Stonehenge, going to Machu Picchu. I'm like, I do nothing at home. I don't need a vacation where I just stay in a cruise ship and do nothing.
Right.
So, it's living life to the fullest. It's being active. It's learning. It's growing. I've been involved in so many different things over the last 3 decades, and it's brought me to the Modern Mystery School, which has an infinite number of programs and classes and things that are still not even released to us as initiates.
Oh,
So
wow.
there's always more, and I used to hate that there was always more. Now I love
Right.
it.
It's like once you start the spiritual journey, it's like you can't ever go back and close the lid.
Yeah, and
And
I've
there's always
tried.
more to do. Yeah.
I've tried it. And that's why I end up in my periods of depression and apathy as an adult have
Yeah.
been, because it said like Marianne Williamson, we're more afraid of our light than our dark.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm
Absolutely.
comfortable. I'm still comfortable with that old neurological pathway that's so
Sure.
rutted in my brain of like things getting tough. Check out, right?
Right.
I have this. It's weird. I have this quitter's mentality, but I'm also very resilient.
Mm,
And the time now, I should quit that. That's silly. Like that's what. But it used to be
right.
like, oh, I should quit
Right.
this. Yeah, this is horrible. I can't do this. That old negative talk is really gone.
Right.
But that I can fall into that first reaction still very easily.
Nice. What are some things that you would suggest for some, like people listening going, yeah, well, I can't travel. I can't do that. I have a job. What are some simple steps that somebody can take away that are tangible to help them start to lead their magnificent life? Because theirs is not yours,
Yeah.
right? So, how would you suggest people start?
I think gratitude journaling is really the easiest path into anything like that.
Mm.
Just sometime today, write down longhand on paper 3 things you're grateful for.
Only three. I make people do 5 to 10.
Well, I'm saying start with 3. Once it's 3, go to 5. Go from 5.
Right.
Yeah, because if you make it, write down 50 things. Like, oh, I'm never
Right,
gonna do that.
right.
There aren't things, But yeah, I'm grateful for my health, my well-being, my family, my friends, my job, even the job I hate. You're grateful for it because it's there, right?
Yeah.
But when you get honest about that, and again, once I realized the power of gratitude, once you start being grateful for things, consciously grateful, you'll notice more and more things to be grateful for.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, if you're used to just being negative and pessimistic and you live off your social media feed and just see, oh, it's the end of the world as we know it. Well, there's no point to anything. That's the experience you're going to have.
Yeah.
Again, even in the darkest days, the world is full of people falling in love, having children, having adventures, living their magnificent life, being of service to others. And you can be that.
Right. And it's not about the thing, it's about the feeling that comes with the thing.
Right.
So it doesn't, one of my favorite quotes is a Wayne Dyer quote, and it goes, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change.
Yep.
Right. I mean, it's so true. You can see the same thing all the time, but when you see it from a different perspective, you're like, oh, my
Hmm.
life is pretty fucking amazing.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. And another tool that really helped me the most from the get go was meditation.
Yeah.
And people would say you need to meditate, like, oh, sitting cross-legged on a mountaintop. I can't do that. Um, Meditation could be as simple as 3 deep breaths. It's
Right.
just slowing down. And a misconception, people, meditation does not mean having empty thoughts. It
Oh my
means
God, you're speaking
letting
my
thoughts come and
language.
go.
This is what I
Yeah.
say to people all the time. Like,
Yeah.
if your brain stops, you're dead. So
Right.
it's okay that your
Yeah.
brain
That's
does
not
not stop.
meditation.
Right. You got bigger problems to worry
Yeah.
about. I love
Yeah.
that. You're speaking my language. And as we come to a close, I always love to ask this question. What is something you live by that you want to share with our listeners?
Hmm. All right. This just popped in the top of mind. So, this is something I said when I was like 10 years old, and my grandmother noticed it and made me like a banner about it. But weird friends are the fun of life.
Say that again.
Weird friends are the fun of life.
That is the title of this podcast. I love that.
Yeah. Embrace your weirdness. Look for the weirdness of other people. Be different. Be unique.
I
Be the
love that.
magnificent you and live your best life.
I love that. My top values are connections, fun, and I'm shifting. The one of them used to be enthusiasm, but I'm playing with leadership now. But
Uh-huh.
connections and fun and weird. Add weird to that, and
Yeah.
we're golden.
Yeah.
So I always love to pull cards. I pulled them before, and I have 3 cards in front of me, and I'm going to have you pick one. So left, center, or right.
Center.
All right. And for those listening, I'm inviting you to choose what's the message you need to hear right now. And oftentimes these have to do with the conversation that we're having. So take a breath. I love it. This is the Moonology deck. So take a breath. So if you chose center, take a breath. Left is act responsibly. And what that feels like to me is like owning your own life, right? Like being responsible for your own life. Because how often are we putting that blame on someone else, that responsibility? And on the right is releasing.
Mm.
Release what doesn't serve you anymore. Andy, thank you so much for this. This has been such a yummy conversation. I really
Yeah,
appreciate this.
I'm glad that we've been in similar circles but haven't crossed paths. So yeah,
Right.
I'm
Right.
glad to finally connect with you.
Absolutely. And for those of you listening, thank you so much for joining me on today's journey towards a more enlightened and fulfilling life. I hope that today's episode has inspired you to embrace your inner wisdom, your weird friends, and navigate your path with a renewed sense of purpose. If you found today's episode valuable, please subscribe, leave a review, do all the things, and share this podcast with someone who might benefit from this message. Stay connected in our community. Both Andy and I's links will be in the show notes. Andy has a resource as well that you can go and book a call with him. That will be there as well. And until next time, continue to shine your light and walk in peace and love. I'm Francine Terrell, and this has been FN Fridays with Francine. Andy, thank you so much for being here today.
My pleasure.